like Prime Minister Trudeau, so that we penetrate the cabinets.
I also want to reiterate how deeply sorry Canada is for the situation this put President Zelensky and the Ukrainian delegation in. It is extremely troubling to think that this egregious error is being politicized by Russia and its supporters to provide false propaganda about what Ukraine is fighting for.
Why does this government treat Alberta like a fart in the room that nobody wants to talk about or acknowledge?
I heard her say a word that I know is distinctly unparliamentary, and I think she may want to withdraw it. The word was F-A-R-T.
I mean, we love your Mr. Trudeau. I mean, his family's always been such big fans about that.
Hello, everybody. Good evening. I am Snow Himbo. This is Yeti, who is finally back, and I have to say, good sir, you were duly missed.
Thank you very much. I'm glad to be back.
Yeah, you've been up to a lot, man. You're out.
Yeah, I've been really busy for sure.
Yeah, how's it been going? You got the Starlink now, is that right?
Yeah, we got Starlink the other day. We had to drive like an hour and a half to go pick it up, but it was worth it. It works pretty good. I just don't like the owner of it. So, but
yeah,
I gotta
that's
say,
kind of
yeah, that was my only thing. I was like, I don't want. But I mean, honestly, we got it and we set it up in the truck and we were using it in the truck on the drive home. So I was like, oh, this is pretty good. Like, that's pretty amazing. So,
I mean, at the end of the day, like, it's not that fucking idiot who's like creating these innovations anyway. He just buys these companies and then goes like, he's like a Steve Jobs. He's just kind of like sitting there like, I want this to happen. Make it happen or you're all fired.
Exactly. Yeah. No, but it's beautiful out here. We could not have ended up in a better place. And like, we're about 40 minutes from like a relatively big town with like Canadian Tire and stuff like that. There's a Rona on the Isle of Madame in Arichat. So like, I've been able to get wood and stuff for building. I've got my floor joist and my floor up and level and squared, all on different posts and stuff like that. So,
damn, that's cool. You're you're pretty much doing Minecraft in real life. It's crazy.
Yeah, basically. I'm gonna build stuff as I go with squares. But and the people out here like have been amazing. We stayed at an Airbnb for a night when we first got here because we didn't have the tent. We had to clear land, and just to get in, right? Like, it was basically like one little walk path to get in, and then there was like a little bit of a clearing that we cleared out after some more so we could put the yurt up. Because we have a 16-foot yurt at the moment. And yeah, so when we were staying at the Airbnb, the guy just gave me a brand new planer. He was like, I just bought a new one, so he's like, you can have this. For like planing wood. It's like a $300-$400 machine too. Just gave it to me. I was like, this is amazing. The greatest people on earth. Another guy came in and dropped off a pedestal sink for us. And there's another guy that's going to be dropping me off flood and drain hydroponic tables.
That is, yeah. The one thing I noticed from moving out of the city right away was how nice everybody was. Because everybody in our area is just same thing. They're super nice. You know, there's just that feeling of community that cities just don't have. Toronto definitely didn't have it.
No,
everybody was just fucking angry all the time. they were always stressed out. They had somewhere to go. They were looking for a reason to yell at someone. I'm not gonna lie, man. I don't think we're meant for the city thing. I think
No. It's too condensed. I think people need to have space for themselves. Like it's too
well, you're not allowed to be monkey. That's the big problem. Humans have to be monkey to some degree or another. And I feel like in cities it's like, well, I have nowhere to play. Fuck. Just got this little shoebox, and then I go to my dead-end job where I do stupid busy work, and then I go back to my shoebox. Where can I run around and throw feces at people? Well, I guess there was a lot of feces throwing in Toronto, so I take that back. But I think that's a different context.
Lots of wildlife out here too, and you can hear like the wolves and the coyotes howling at night. It's like crystal clear. You can see the stars and everything today. Like there's a roadway like just in front of our land, and there's like a street light, and then another street light like 300 yards down. Like there's no real light pollution over here.
That's amazing, for real.
Yeah, it's been really nice and quiet at night.
A bit of advice that you might not need, but if you do encounter wolves, do not feed them. It's not a good time.
I'm actually gonna be like the Aquaman, but of like land. I'll just send my thoughts to the wolf, and they'll just be like, "All right, we got you," and then just take out people I don't like.
Yeah, at our cottage growing up, I was a dumbass kid, and I fed the wildlife. I think it was actually a bear. It was something. I don't remember. But I definitely fed some kind of predator food, and that just leads them to discover the miracle of garbage. And then it's just every garbage day is bullshit forever from that point, because they'll realize like, oh, this garbage stuff is just endless food. This is perfect. And they don't even have what I can't stand about wildlife is they don't even have the manners to like take your garbage away. No, they're like, I'm just gonna eat this right here. So this guy, I ruin his 7 o'clock morning, like wake up. Like if you take the garbage away. Yeah.
I'm gonna become the raccoon whisperer. I've seen enough of them have been dead on the roads out, like especially on their highway around Nova Scotia. Like raccoons are everywhere. Just dead ones.
Yeah, and it's crazy because for how many dead raccoons you see, it's like their population numbers they're like pigeons at this point. I remember that's the one thing about Toronto. They run around in like gangs. You just see like groups of raccoons running around in the streets. And they have no fear. The craziest thing too, they have no fear of humans. They don't give a shit. You can't get rid of them. You don't like yell at them or like. I remember walking right up to one, and it just looked at me like, "What the fuck do you want? What do you want?
Why are you Hey, this is my lane. Get out of here."
He's like, "I'll call the cops. This is what is going on?"
I'm Robin. Look at my mask.
But so you were kind enough to record a video just of your situation, what you got rocking up there, and so I figured we'd check that out. Because it'd be cool to give everybody kind of a visual of what's been going on there. So without further ado,
because it's pretty dark here at the moment, so.
Oh, hold on. I got a better way to do this. There we go. That's perfect. Okay.
Hey, everyone. How's it going? It's, I don't even know what day it is, to be honest. Don't care, even. Oh, wait. I guess it's Monday, since we're doing a show. Mm-hmm. So I got that much done. So, I'm going to give you a little tour of where we are at so far. I'm just going to turn that is the view and the Atlantic Ocean.
The Atlantic. I didn't know you were so close to the Atlantic.
There's some nice, pretty
as
Oh, yeah.
is
Super close.
You got endless fish.
sunlight.
Yeah.
The
We're
truck,
gonna try and find some land like by
and
the
then
ocean. Oh,
home as the time be. So what we have is our Vivor yurt. It's 16 feet diameter. It actually went up pretty easily for the most part. We didn't have too much trouble. The stakes that came with it didn't stick in the ground as well as I would have hoped. So we ended up getting some of those thicker yellow ones. Just over here is my trailer that we packed everything in. I still have a few things left in here. My miter saw, a couple clothes. But now we'll kind of go down my very shoddily put together stairs for the temporary. It just makes it a little easier because we had the gravel thrown down. There was a culvert, but there was trees right up to about, well, where you can see kind of the tree lines up here. So all this was cleared. All this was all treed in. All this area was fairly treed in. Well, this actually, sorry, where we put the yurt, it was much more kind of open. There was not trees, but kind of rose bushes and stuff like that. Some of the stuff we've cleared out is just over here. And so the first thing we did was get the gravel, put that in the culvert so that we could park the truck and get it off the road. From then, we had to cut a path through down. We brought all the stuff down in the boxes. As you can tell, it's still a giant mess because my main priority has been getting that frame set up in the back to build our little bunkie house. Someone came by and dropped off a sink to us, and they're like, hey, you're probably going to need a sink, and I do. So it's just a few little odds and ends at this point. I'm not even going to show you the other side because it's where I have trash and such. But so far we have this Vivor tent here. Got a smokestack for the, or it's a stove jack is what it's called. We have a little, just a small little camp stove, kind of furnace heater to keep it warm. Keeps it warm enough for now. There is mornings where it's super chilly out. But so far, we've been doing pretty good. My wife is really good at being cold, so she doesn't mind at all. Neither do I too much. I mean, if it's me or her, I'm the one going to be complaining, to be honest. All right, I'm going to switch back around. So I just set up this little canopy for now to kind of just protect some tools and stuff. Give me a little bit of shade during the day. So everything is everywheres. As you can see, I got some Ryobi, a little like Ryobi starter kit. It's been really good though, the drills and the impact driver. I have to figure out how to get the skill saw put together still. But that's just one of the small little Allen key that doesn't seem to be wanting to work with me. So there's clearly some trick. My solar panels, I'm currently trying to fix a small issue. The connectors I built originally, if you can see right there, you can see the copper at the end. I don't think I used the best wire, to be honest. So I'm going to redo that with some other wire that I have that's a little thicker and probably a little better quality. Because those strands actually look rather thick, which probably inhibits more than it helps me currently. Because four 100 watt panels is not a ton of solar. It should be enough to get by once I get it running properly. But we had a few issues here and there, but it is what it is. It's not, I spent a lot of time learning so that I can diagnose problems and fix them myself. So all that nerding out has paid. Oh, look, one of my pegs just came out.
my action cam sequence.
Okay, so I've got it somewhat pushed in, but I'm going to grab my sledgehammer Sledgehammer. And try not to fall and trip everywhere as we're going. That is the one thing we're kind of having to fix little things. Not that regularly, but enough that you kind of do have to walk around. I had a shower out here yesterday. We have a gas generator, some gas jugs, got some gas and oil for my chainsaw that I have not even put together. My Geno's Pub from Fort McMurray sign is out back there.
The pub where my wife and I got married.
I'll get to the part that I've actually been building.
Oh, that's cool.
And that is my frame for my bunkie. I started out by leveling I leveled out 4 spots to begin with, got the frame up, and then I started adding in more posts over here, in the middle, on the sides. I have 1 post left to do, but there's been a stupid tree stump in my way, and so I've decided to just be smart and move where I'm going to put the post. Because if I put it right here, I can actually hammer that post into this board and from this side, which will give me even more strength and stability. A gentleman came by today to help me out put the floor joists in. Showed me how to put the joist hangers and everything in as well. So from taking a day and a half probably, it took about an hour. So that was great. And then out here, I'm going to take those little thin strips, going to tack them into the very bottom around here. Then I'm going to cut this to shape and size, drop it in. That's what I'm going to put my insulation on. Because other than that, I would have to find a way to get underneath and hammer up. And that doesn't look like a fun time, to be honest. So, I mean, down here wouldn't be bad because I basically just be on my knees. But up here, I would have to shrink. I've already lost 100 pounds. I don't think I'm shrinking that much more. So, but once that's done, I can get the insulation in. I get the floor. So once that's all, once I've got those boards in and the insulation, I'll put Tyvek, just that like white wrapping they put in for housing, for insulation and stuff, keep water damage and all that out. That will go on top, and then I will put tongue and groove 3/4 inch plywood down as the base. That will function as the floor. Then I can start with 2x4s, start to build up the walls. My wife and I, Miss Yeti, were talking about it, and the plan I think for now is we're just going to put a couple small windows in, just for cost-wise. We don't have the money to buy a big window that we want, but I'll learn how to go back, reframe a window in an existing wall, and then we'll put a big kind of bay window in so that we can see, because this will be the view from our little shanty. So, our land kind of goes back on an angle. So we're still going to have to go through and mark it more specifically. I think we're going to try and use GPS and a couple other little tricks that my wife has actually been looking up. She's quite brilliant, and it's great help that she wants to do this kind of stuff as well. So she's been really good for helping with the water. I'll show you one of our rain barrels here. Well, our only rain barrel at the moment. But what we've been doing is where the tents kind of come to the point, we've been putting bowls underneath just at the bottom to catch water. That was 100% Shauna. I did not even think of that. Here, simple example, we have a little measuring cup on this one. And then as we go around the back, there is just a lot of stuff that we still have to go through and figure out what's in what. That's why it's still in the plastic cases for the most part. And So that, for the most part, is what we have done as of now. But by next week, I hope to have some walls and stuff up as well. And then hopefully we'll have some walls and stuff built up by then. We're going to just do a simple slant roof for now. It's easier to do with the angles. And frankly, I think it'll be easier to collect water off of. With that, just having one point that I can kind of direct the water to, fill up rain barrels. We've got a good amount of like height over here. So it should work out pretty well. We'll also be able to dump our gray water back this way, which is just like shower water and that kind of stuff. Don't throw food water down. Don't throw feces, urine. Don't throw that stuff kind of into it. We have a compost toilet at the moment. We're going to get a fancier compost toilet eventually that looks like a real toilet, but it'll be quite nice to have that kind of toilet, to be honest. I'm hoping to find a way to use all our shower water and stuff like that will go back through into our gardens or anything that we have built. So, but yeah, so to eventually start greenhouses down that area. There's a stream that, depending on the season and how much water, it could be decent, like 4 feet wide, or it could be 6 inches wide at times. So we'll see what kind of happens as we go. But also, we have a lot of salt water because of the ocean. So I'm going to try and find a way to pull water from the atmosphere. There's a few different techniques and technologies that people have used. And it works pretty good, especially with salt water for some reason. I should have been pointing that at myself, sorry. But yeah, I think for right now, that's all I have at the moment. I'd show you the inside of the tent, but it's a disaster. And that's my fault, because I've been doing this outside. And Miss Yeti is, of course, being a nurse and saving people's lives. Mostly mine, though. But, alright, I'll talk to you guys later. I'll see you guys tonight in a few minutes.
Nice. Man, I gotta say, that's one hell of a plot of land. What a view.
Yeah, it's pretty amazing, man. We just like fucking lucked out so well, though. I always joke I have the worst and best luck. No in between crap.
Yeah, I feel the same myself. I had a perfect example. Perfect example this weekend. So for those who aren't aware, I've been having like stomach issues the last month. So I finally like got to a doctor and kind of got it sorted. They're still running tests, but I was put on some like probiotics and a couple other things, and they finally resolved completely. And then the second they resolved, I got fucking sick. It's like kind of the same thing where it's like there's no in between. It's like I have really shitty luck and then I have great luck, but then shitty luck comes too. So I spent so to people who think I sound a little froggy, it's because I'm still getting over a cold. It sucks because like I feel like the worst weekends are the ones where you're sick. Like you're just sick for the weekend. You know, like all throughout the week you're okay, and then the weekend comes and you spend it like on the couch, like drinking broth and shit. And
I think it's partially because we push our bodies, and then as soon as we give it a chance to rest, it's like,
yeah, I think you might be onto something there. Yeah, that's God damn, it looks. I like the base you got going on. So you're gonna make like a bunkie. Is that gonna be
it's gonna be like a 12 by 16 like single room cabin.
Oh, that's fucking cool.
Yeah. And then like we'll have Well, eventually, like, I'll get a shower and stuff set up in there. It'll have a bathroom and everything. But like, it's mostly just to get us through winter, and then I'll probably use it as like some kind of like little vacation rental or summers for my friends to come visit, right?
That's so cool. Yeah, that'd be, man, that looks awesome. And then,
You
yeah,
cannot
you
believe
guys,
the prices of Airbnbs around this place. They're like $200 plus, every single one of them. It's ridiculous.
yeah, the amount of the amount of property that's just being used for Airbnb is pretty bonkers.
Well, then that's the part. Like, you get people that just buy up houses or condos in the cities and stuff.
Yeah, and they just want to get that back. Meanwhile, we've got a housing crisis, and it's like, well, I guess people who are vacationing, who are willing to pay a pretty penny, are worth more, I suppose.
Well, and Trudeau's like, we're going to make more rentals. We don't need rentals. We need homes that people can own.
Yeah,
And not tiny home crap. People should be able to afford real homes.
Yeah, and then the conservatives are like, we need to build the homes. And I'm like, so they're going to be affordable, right? No?
We're going to build the homes.
We're going to build the homes so we can afford less homes together. There's going to be, it's like, I've said this before. It's like a weird, perverse, like version of trickle down where it's like, if we just build more homes, then the price will magically come down. It's like, fuck no, it won't.
No, you're just flooding the market. And even though it's flooded, the people control the people that control the housing can artificially inflate it by just holding places back because they're not really costing them anything.
They'll just buy up the homes and be like, wow, more homes that we can rent out for crazy amounts of rent. Cool, thanks.
And it's like, well, people can afford it. No, people can't afford it. They just need a place to live that badly, right? Like,
well, that's always been, and I feel like our American brethren can relate to this. That's always been the conservative shtick. Let's disguise pro upper class policies as working class policies. That's their shtick. That's always been their shtick. They're out here talking about, we're here for the little guy. We're the real working class party. Rah, rah, rah. But then when you really dissect the things they're trying to get done, it never benefits you. It always benefits the people at the top. So
yeah, and it keeps the illusion alive because everyone one day wants to be that big owner or the big boss, and they would rather hold on to that dream than simply just fix the issue that makes that dream not seem abundant. Or not abundant, sorry.
Well, it's the temporary embarrassed millionaire thing, right? Everybody's just like, you know what? I just need the right conditions and then I'll become rich and everybody will like me. And it's like, it's a bigger problem than that, unfortunately.
Yeah.
Anyway, glad to see you two are thriving over there. That is super dope. I am jealous, but we got an okay setup here.
That's good.
Yeah. Moving.
You guys can always come visit one day.
Oh, we definitely will. Believe you me. Oh, what the fuck did I do? Hold on. All right, moving swiftly along, we do have some news to share with everybody too. This is a really interesting one. Give me one sec here. I resigned from Canada's largest broadcasting corporation over its complicity in Israel's genocide. I resigned from CBC after voicing my concerns over their coverage of Palestine. I have since seen how CBC's policy on impartiality helped manufacture consent for genocide. by Arthur Rana. This was from October 16th, 2024. Words can empower, arm, and evoke sentiments that stimulate new ideas, worldviews, and policies. Being the only Muslim in the newsroom, I feared the language the Canadian Broadcasting Corporation was using to talk about Palestinians and resistance could ignite similar emotions that justified the U.S. invasion of Iraq and mass killings of innocent civilians in 2001. Ugh, thank you. I've been drawing these parallels for this whole last fucking year of like, oh my God, how can more people not see the frightening similarities in the rhetoric?
It's the same thing. They always want to make us hate everyone else. No matter what color they are, they just want us to hate.
I mean, fuck, it's not just that. It's just like, there's this aura of like, how do you not know better? I know you were old enough to be alive through the whole War on Terror. This is just War on Terror 2.0.
Yeah. No, they don't see it. Memories like goldfish.
That's the biggest problem with us. We don't learn from history. Days after October 7th, 2023, I sat across from a CBC executive who appeared uneasy yet curious about my concerns over CBC's coverage of Hamas's attack on Israel. I was appalled by CBC's lack of historical context between Israel and Palestine and the language used to defend Israel's massacre of Palestinians. The executive appeared empathetic, but then quoted CBC's stance on impartiality and the importance of balanced coverage. But, I argued, when crimes against humanity are being committed, there is no such thing as both sides to a story. There is only the truth. After sharing my concerns with the executive, I was strategically dismissed from daily pitch meetings for a few weeks. But as the war amplified and I returned to my seat at the table, I continuously brought up to my peers and editors that labeling genocide as the Hamas-Israel war falsely portrays that both Palestinians and Israelis are on even playing fields. This narrative ignores that for 76 years, Palestinians have been forcibly ousted from their homes, confined to the barbed wires of the Gaza Strip, and have been under constant surveillance of Israeli settlers. Instead of being receptive, senior journalists in the newsroom parroted CBC's language guide, which highlights the language CBC uses. The CBC language guide, I'm just going to say, CBC language guide sounds like something George Orwell came up with. Like, what the fuck is this? The language guide? Just talk like a person. The CBC language guide on the Middle East is a catastrophic oxymoron. The guide prohibits using the term colonization, but encourages journalists to provide context by saying Palestinians fled or were forced from their homes. The targeted killing of Palestinians are referred to as collective punishment, and the term occupied is okay to use if an adjective is needed. Apartheid, a policy in which people are separated based on racial or ethnic criteria, is discouraged when describing the barrier between West Bank and Israel that separates Israelis from Palestinians. Finally, a senior producer told me that acknowledging Palestine is like referring to Persia, an outdated term that refers to a historical region, despite Palestine being recognized by the United Nations. In January, The Breach reported that CBC acknowledged to a reader's complaint that they reserve terms such as massacre, brutal, and slaughter in reference to Hamas's October 7th attacks, but attribute neutral language around Israeli attacks because they are carried out routinely. The complainant, retired Professor Jeff Winch, argued CBS's biased language skews the reader's empathy towards Israel and away from Palestinians, a further dehumanizing of an already downtrodden people. I wondered then, was impartiality an excuse for complicity? In formerly colonized countries, journalism is used as a decolonization tool to grant a voice to those silenced by authoritarian governments and institutions. In contrast, the CBC's goal to report impartially by calling the invasion of Lebanon and growing death toll in Gaza the Israel-Hamas war, reflects their own subjectivity and moral failure to side with justice. Israel is undoubtedly a settler colonial force, and Charles Mills explains in The Racial Contract that settler colonialism has various tools it uses to achieve the upper hand over colonized peoples, one being institutions that act as the right arm to justify their actions. CBC's journalistic practices are an offense to dozens of journalists like Shireen Abu Akleh, a Palestinian journalist targeted and killed by the IDF, and Arshad Sharif, a Palestinian journalist killed after vocalizing his stance against the Pakistani army. Both put their lives at the forefront of their work to stand for the greater good of humanity. Instead, Canadian journalists, who voice their moral duty to stand on the right side of history, are silenced under the banner of objectivity, a concept that, although great in theory, is still man-made and injected with the biases of the master who leads the institution. By the time I resigned, I became a shell of myself. The constant tug of war between my conscience and CBC's language guide. Fuck me. This language guide just sounds like... It sounds like just this mechanism to which, like, hey, let's appear impartial, but, like, through our wording, we can kind of point the reader towards the narrative we're trying to steer them in.
Yep. State-funded
It's so weird.
CBC right here.
Mm-hmm. The language used at CBC to describe the atrocities in Gaza was hammered into my subconscious and fogged my critical thinking. I began to believe that perhaps Israel might not be in the wrong. CBC is the truth teller, and it is I, the troublemaker, who deserved the dismissive demeanor of my peers to whom I constantly pitched stories with Palestinian voices. It took months to clear my mind, and when it did, I understood that impartiality was a concept that was used to avoid confrontation from state actors, politicians, and Israeli lobbyists. By doing so, journalists working for mainstream Canadian media had cowered into the role of stenographers, leaving Palestinians defenseless in the face of genocide. But lying low to avoid backlash only empowers the wrongdoers to continue inflicting injustices on the oppressed. The language not only minimizes the brutality of the oppressor, but justifies it. Now is the time for journalists to use their power to change the opinions of the masses through the story they write. After all, truth-telling is not only a moral human obligation, but for journalists, it is also a revolutionary act.
You don't even have to be a journalist for it to be a revolutionary act.
God
Keep
damn.
speaking the truth.
Well, I will do them justice by saying we here at INN will keep speaking the truth, even if YouTube's trying to shut us down every day that ends in Y.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm not gonna lie, that's inspiring, because that's someone who probably quit a lucrative career that they could probably have had an amazing future at because of their principles, and that's something you just don't see that much anymore. People sacrificing, people making great sacrifices because of their convictions.
Yep. I mean, and I get it because it's hard, like especially in money jobs, right? But hopefully she'll be okay. And
well, I mean, I think eventually we will find a place where, you know, unfortunately there's not much market, and you can just look at all the liberal and like conservative grifters out there. There's not much of a market for truth nowadays, unfortunately, in the moment. There's a market for propaganda. All right, if you want to make the bag. I say this to all the like butthurt weirdos on social media who call me a grifter. I'm like, first off, I'm a fucking Marxist. That is nightmare difficulty on the grift scale. If you want to grift, you grift on the right, first of all. You got to be like a Daily News, Jordan Peterson, Ben Shapiro type. If you want to get that bag, that's where you go. You'll make you'll get millions of dollars real quick just by regurgitating easily debunkable shit that anybody with access to the internet could disprove in like a minute. If you just repeat that like a parrot over and over, you can make, man, you'll own your home, you'll have several cars, you'll have all that in no time.
Yeah.
But as far as actually telling the truth,
it's a shame how Jonathan Peterson ended up. Because, like, his first initial fame, he wasn't wrong in his stance there. But that now he's just gotten ludicrous.
well, that's what I'm seeing from a lot of these grifter types, though, especially from Jordan Peterson. They start out with speaking against a concept that a lot of people can agree with.
Mm-hmm.
His initial complaint was centered around freedom of speech. That was his initial rise to fame. But then he takes that and he pivots over to, he goes from freedom of speech to launching one of the most pervasive disinformation campaigns I've seen in a very long time. This is a guy who spends all day long talking about the evils of Marxism, and then the first debate about Marxism he gets into, he admits he only skimmed the Communist Manifesto, for fuck's sake. So it's like you're going from freedom of speech and pretending that's a value you care about to just lying for money. And too many of these people make that shift of like, oh, okay, so now that I got some eyeballs, now that I got some peepers on me, let's see where I can direct this in order to make bank. So yeah, I personally hope they are okay. This was like, my God, this was like a really, it was an inspiring stance that I can see, to be like, for sure. This isn't easy to do, and a lot of people won't do this. They'll be terrified. I mean, I know working class people who are terrified of doing this too, where it's like, I better keep my opinions to myself. Otherwise, like, you know, maybe my employer will get mad and take away my ability to feed my family. And that should never be a thing in our society.
Oh, and so many healthcare workers through the pandemic were scared to have any conversations about like anything they would see because they were worried about getting fired. Like, it is obscene that we are in this world today where like medical professionals are scared to talk out about medical things.
Yep. And unfortunately, that's an issue that a lot of people on the so-called left are still getting dead fucking wrong. There's a lot of blinders out there when it comes to like, I'm for this concept, but I have exceptions. And if you go against these exceptions, I'm going to get really fucking upset.
Yeah, it's like, well, then you don't actually for anything.
Well, you see it all the time on the right when it comes to Israel-Palestine. All these free speech warriors, they lose their fucking minds the second there's like a Palestine protest. I've lost count of how many of these free speech warriors were shrieking and screeching for police to like beat down and imprison people who are protesting the genocide in Gaza.
Oh yeah, like that's the thing. All the political people are always just hypocrites because they're constantly having to reverse what they think the week before.
Yep. And the thing is, this is a concept that like across the board, drives me insane. You've got so many people who claim to care about free speech, and then it comes around to that one thing where this free speech is inconvenient for them, and then all of a sudden they're completely against free speech. As a rule, I've said this before. Yeah. I've said this before, but it bears repeating. If you've ever uttered the phrase, I'm for free speech, but you're not for free speech. If you have to add qualifiers to that, then you're not actually for free speech. What you are for is you're for people speaking their mind as long as that doesn't inconvenience your perspective or worldview, which means you're objectively not for free speech.
Yeah. And free speech really only means the government can't prosecute you. You're perfectly fine to say whatever the hell you want out in public. And I'm perfectly within my right to tell you you're a fucking moron, too.
Yeah, that needs to be a free speech that never needs to be taken away. I respect everybody saying whatever they want, but I also respect the right of me ratioing your ass on Twitter.
That's the thing. It's like you can say whatever you want, but then I can also call you out for being a piece of shit for it because I'm allowed to do what you're allowed to do.
Which in and of itself is a self-regulating process. If you allow people full control over their speech, you're also allowing them the ability to be corrected and get called an idiot, or have someone be like, that's not true, check this out. Hey, you're wrong about that, here's why. And that process can only make us smarter as a society. That can only make us more compassionate as a society. That's all that can do. Taking speech away in any regard, like, people are still going to talk. The problem is now you're siloing them off into echo chambers where they're just going to reinforce each other's delusions, which is even more harmful.
Yeah, because then it snowballs. It'll just keep going and it becomes bigger and bigger. And you don't even notice it till all of a sudden you're like, what happened here?
It also doesn't work because if people feel like their speech is being suppressed, they're just going to go somewhere, especially in the age of the internet. They're just going to go somewhere where it's not suppressed. And if you're not in those spaces to counteract their beliefs, then they're just going to remain stupid. So, moving swiftly along, this was a really good article up on rabble.ca. We featured them before here. This is they're really good. They're a pretty solid news site. I personally like them quite a bit. We're going to zoom this up. Is that too zoomed? I don't think that's too zoomed. No, Canada should not, by Linda McQuaig, Canada should not let Israel's defiance of the UN to go unchallenged. As of October 18th, 2024, recent weeks have seen tense standoffs between UN aid workers in Lebanon and the Israeli military. This article goes hard. I'm not going to lie. Given the seemingly bottomless depths of human depravity, it's hard to imagine that the world was ever able to come together and create something as inspired as the United Nations. But fresh from the horrors of the Second World War, there was a hunger for an international body that could bring the world's unions together in pursuit of peace, create global programs to protect human rights, provide humanitarian aid and improve living standards, and also help maintain a rules-based system of international law. Sadly, the UN hasn't fully succeeded. Still, given the difficulty of the task, it's amazing that it's made a difference at all. Or in words attributed to Winston Churchill, the UN was not designed to take us to heaven, but to prevent us from going to hell. By that lower yardstick, it deserves a solid B+. Now, to preface, I have my own criticisms of the UN. I'm sure my compatriot here does as well, but I feel like this article bears some light regardless. So it's disheartening to see that the world community, notably the West, including Canada, is doing so little to safeguard the UN in the face of Israel's open hostility and scorn for the international body. The most recent examples of Israel's antagonism towards the UN are its repeated attacks this month on the United Nations Interim Force in Lebanon, UNIFIL, the UN peacekeeping mission in Lebanon, injuring 5 peacekeepers. Rather than promising to stop the attacks, Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu has demanded UNIFIL leave the Lebanon border, where it has had a UN mandate to keep the peace for almost 5 decades, but where its presence now hinders Israel's invasion plans. This flagrant disregard for international law and its institutions has been met with criticism from the West, including Canada, but no penalties, sanctions, or boycotts that could apply international pressure on Israel. In an unprecedented move earlier this month, the Netanyahu government blocked UN Security General Antonio Guterres from entering Israel. This prompted a protest signed by 104 nations, including France, Switzerland, Sweden, and Finland, but not Canada. And last May, when the UN General Assembly voted to back a Palestinian bid for UN membership, Israeli Ambassador Gilad Erdan angrily denounced the vote and fed pages of the UN Charter into a mini shredder. He later called for the UN headquarters to be wiped off the face of the earth. Fucking psychopaths. Jesus Christ. God forbid we have any compassion at all for brown people. Israel has long been hostile towards United Nations Relief and Works Agency for Palestinian Refugees, UNRWA, the UN's aid agency for Palestinian refugees. It has accused UNRWA of harboring militants from Hamas, which invaded Israel last year, killing 1,200 and kidnapping 250. UNRWA fired 9 employees for possible involvement in the Hamas attack on the basis of Israeli evidence. In response to the Hamas attack, and again, I like how this article puts this shit into perspective, because it goes, here's what everybody is nonstop pointing to as justification. Now, here's the comparison on the other side of the angle. Israel has bombed and starved Palestinians, killing more than 40,000 in Gaza, according to the Gaza Health Ministry. As a note, as most of our audience know, that the actual number is quite higher than that. But that's according to the Gaza Health Ministry. It has also destroyed UNRWA schools and aid centers, causing the death of almost 230 UNRWA workers. By far the most UN personnel killed in a single conflict since the UN's creation, said Guterres. The Israeli parliament has also given preliminary approval to a bill banning UNRWA from the occupied Palestinian territories, which Guterres said would be a catastrophe in what is already an unmitigated disaster. Israel's open contempt for the UN and its agencies has the effect of undermining the international body's authority. By accepting Israel's defiance of the UN, Western nations, led by the United States, but including Canada, are failing to uphold vital principles of international law in the very notion that it applies to all nations. Canada was among the founding members of the UN in 1945 and for decades played an active role in UN peacekeeping missions. Washington's endless supply of weapons has emboldened Netanyahu, leaving the rest of the international community, including Canada, as the only hope for applying sufficient pressure to restrain his government. As Yael Berta, an Israeli professor at the Hebrew University in Jerusalem, recently tweeted to the world, "Please do everything you can to stop this. We Israelis who oppose Netanyahu's regime cannot stop this from within. There is no formal opposition. Help." And that pretty much says it all, y'all.
Yeah.
That pretty much says it all. This is a country that is now flipping the double bird at pretty much the world at this point and saying, you know what, fuck you, we're going to do what we want. And the only way they can do that is because they know they got the West behind them.
Yeah.
We could all get together and say, yeah, we don't got your back on this anymore. You're on your own, Chief.
Yeah.
And they will probably cease these hostilities and now invasions and their progression towards greater Israel. Most likely overnight.
And I don't think the people of the West are going to really realize till it's too late and missiles are hitting our country and all of a sudden our countries are being destroyed. All of a sudden your grandchildren are buried under rubble. And then people might start to realize what it is. but I don't. It's disheartening to see this stuff, and so many people still just ignore it, like blindly.
Yeah, I mean, again, another lesson we didn't learn from World War II. That famous poem, "First they came for," right? Eventually, they're going to come for us.
Yeah.
And my point that I've been making since I became aware of the Palestinian crisis, which goes back way before a year ago. I mean, shit. One of the first things I acted in my early 20s was a music video called Gaza Square Dance.
Nice.
Yeah. The point I've been making forever is that if we normalize this overseas, if we normalize this whole, because of the actions that happened over here, it's okay to commit genocide and to kill innocent people. It's okay to do collective punishment if only the right conditions are met. The powers that be will just create those conditions if they feel like they need to enact collective punishment. If we normalize that over here, then you're giving the establishment the green light to do it whenever the fuck they want. Because there's nothing preventing the psychopaths running our governments from in 5 years just going, oh, there was like a mass riot over here, and like a bunch of people died because of it. They were innocent people. Therefore, this group over here that we determined to be the people behind it, to be the enemy, well, we're in a war. We're defending ourselves, right? That pendulum can swing in the opposite direction real fucking quick. So I do, but yeah, that was a good article as well. I'll say it forever, free Palestine. God bless everyone who does have the courage to speak out at this moment. I feel like this is really going to be one of those things where, nice, buddy.
Yeah, I've had it for a while. I keep it with me.
It's beautiful. I feel like this is going to be one of those moments where, like, there's going to be a lot of people looking back in about 5 years, and they're going to be having some really distressing feelings. Because here's the thing, like, everybody doesn't get deprogrammed at once. I'm trying to do my part as best I can, but like, there's going to be some people, and I empathize for them too. There's going to be some people that realize later on, like, they break out of the propaganda after the fact.
Yeah.
And that's going to fucking suck. When you look back and you're like, I can't believe I got tricked like this.
Well, and even like, you look at the vitriol some of those people will throw at you. Can you realize when they realize they're wrong and how disgusting their behavior has been towards other people?
Yep.
Like these people are like wishing death on other people for not agreeing with them. Like, this is a level of sickness that has not been seen for a long, long time so openly, at least in the West.
I'd argue it hasn't been seen since World War II. Yep. It hasn't been seen.
I would agree.
It's the same formula. And if you go look at the stages of genocide, we've been moving swiftly along. And we're between the denying it happened and the extermination. We're definitely in the extermination phase. But we're moving over into denying it happened too. I'm already seeing people. I'm already seeing the IDF bots on social media trying to paint this as like, well, it's not a genocide. Like, yeah, no, it's yeah. Why aren't they all dead if it's a genocide? Like, just the dumbest logic. But yeah, that's where we're at. Next on the docket, though, I'd love your take on this. This is a curious article. It's from a while ago. but this guy on Twitter posted it. He's he doesn't make his ideology regularly, like he doesn't make his ideology too known. It's at Karl Marx HD on Twitter. I know it's a real mystery where his affiliations lie, but he shared this from a while back, and I'm really curious. His defense was like the carbon tax is a scam, basically. Which, I mean, I'm not one of those climate change is a hoax kind of people. I just have absolutely no fucking faith in our leaders to do anything about it. And they're probably not telling the truth on some level. Because, like
there's definitely some lying going on.
Of every major crisis, I find out later, we were told a bunch of bullshit, and it's vastly different from what they're painting it as.
Mm-hmm.
Now it could be way worse, or it could be way different, or it could be way less worse. We just don't know. But this is really curious. This is really curious. So this is from 2019. Canada's forests actually emit more carbon than they absorb, despite what you've heard on Facebook. Our managed forest land hasn't been a net carbon sink since 2001. And again, this is on CBC, so take it with a grain of salt. You might have heard that Canada's forests are an immense carbon sink, sucking up all sorts of CO2, more than we produce. So we don't have to worry about our greenhouse gas emissions. This claim has been circulated on social media and repeated by pundits and politicians. This would be convenient for our country if it were real. Hitting our emissions reduction targets would be a breeze. But like most things that sound too good to be true, this one is false. That's because trees don't just absorb carbon when they grow. They emit it when they die and decompose or burn. When you add up both the absorption and emission, Canada's forests haven't been a net carbon sink since 2001. Due largely to forest fires and insect infestations, the trees have actually added to our country's greenhouse gas emissions for each of the past 15 years on record. Not surprisingly then, Canada has historically excluded its forests when accounting for its total greenhouse emissions to the rest of the world. We had that option under international agreements, and it was in our interest to leave the trees out of the total tabulation since they would have boosted our overall emissions. But just in the past couple of years, we've taken a different approach. We are now making the case to the United Nations that things like forest fires and pine beetle infestations shouldn't count against us, and that only human-related changes to our forests should be included when doing the calculations that matter to our emission reduction targets. By that accounting method, Canada's forestry activities would indeed count as a net carbon sink each year. But even then, they wouldn't cancel out our emissions from other sources. Not even close. To understand why, we have to do a wee bit of math. More of a source than a sink. Oh god, it's math. Fuck me. First, the baseline, our annual emissions. Canada emits roughly 700 megatons of CO2 each year. This does not include any impacts from forests or other parts of our landscapes, such as wetlands and farmland. Canada has historically excluded land use related emissions and absorptions in its official accounting, and with good reason if the goal is to reduce emissions on paper. That's because our trees in particular have actually hurt our bottom line. For the past 15 years, they've been more of a source than a sink, said Dominique Blaine, a director in the Science and Technology branch of Environment and Climate Change Canada. Canada's managed forests were a net contributor of roughly 78 megatons of emissions in 2016, the most recent year on record. And we see a 8-bit Nintendo map, I guess you could call it, of managed forest versus unmanaged forest. Which, goddamn, do we have a lot of forests that are just wilding out there? Canada's managed forest includes all forests under direct human influence, covering about 226 million hectares in total, or 65% of Canada's total forest area. Which, my God, that's a lot of rangers, I gotta say. This includes all areas that are managed for harvesting, subject to fire or insect management, or protected as part of a park or other designation. It covers some 226 million hectares and accounts for 65% of Canada's total forest area. In 2015, largely due to raging wildfires, these forests kicked a whopping 237 more megatons of carbon dioxide into the atmosphere than they absorbed. But when you exclude natural disturbances like fires and insect infestations, and look only at the areas directly impacted by human forestry activity, the picture changes. It's these areas where forests act as a net carbon sink year after year. And we got net carbon emissions from Canada's managed forests. So it's reported in megatons of CO2 equivalent. Positive values mean net emissions, negative values mean net absorption.
Not doing great, are we?
Huh?
Not doing great.
The sink effect is largely the result of new trees being planted and growing after mature ones are cut down. The harvested lumber, meanwhile, releases its carbon to the atmosphere more slowly. The eventual decomposition of lumber products is actually included as part of our greenhouse gas accounting, Blaine said, with scientists estimating the related carbon emissions over a period of decades. On average, areas subject to forestry activity have been a net sink of roughly 26 megatons annually since 2001. Now, remember, our annual emissions total around 700 megatons. So even with this favorable accounting, our forestry practices would only negate roughly 3 to 4% of our greenhouse gas output each year. That's a far cry from the carbon neutral or even carbon negative claims that have been made about Canada and its forests. Still, it's not negligible, and there is a case to be made for using forests and other biomass as part of our climate change strategy. Anthropogenic activity. Mark Cameron is a former policy advisor to Prime Minister Stephen Harper. I'm going to throw up. And now runs Canadians for Clean Prosperity, a nonpartisan group that promotes market-based policies that generate growth while conserving our environment. Anytime I look at market-based, I'm like, are you just trying to do a capitalism and somehow fix a problem? Because that's just going to not fix the problem. But I digress. He says effective management of trees and other biomass still has some value in fighting climate change, even if it's not the get out of jail free card or magic bullet that some people make it out to be. I hear this frequently from people who don't want to take additional climate action, arguing that Canada doesn't really have to because we have such great forests, Cameron said. Canada should do as much as we can to sequester carbon naturally. We should take advantage of our forests, our wetlands, but it doesn't mean that because we have a lot of forests, we don't have to worry about carbon emissions, which is often the line that people use. When you factor in other types of biomass with forestry activity, wetlands, farmland, and the like, the potential for carbon sequestration, that's a great word, sequestration. Sequestration? I don't know how to pronounce it, but I like the word. Sequestration. I'm sequestrating so hard right now. Okay, I digress. Together, these carbon sinks totaled 28 megatons in 2016 and would decrease our total greenhouse gas emissions for the year by 4%, according to Canada's latest inventory report. Depending on the practices in any given year, these land use activities have the potential to be even larger sinks. Applied in 1990, for instance, they decreased Canada's greenhouse gas output that year by 11%. How these sinks are measured and accounted for, however, is a matter of ongoing debate and revision. International credit, even if emissions don't change. In its 2017 revised submission to the United Nations Framework Convention on Climate Change, the federal government indicated how it plans to reevaluate its accounting of biomass. Canada is examining its approach to accounting in the land use change and forestry sector, the submission reads. As part of this process, Canada will exclude the impacts of natural disturbances and focus on anthropogenic emissions and removals. In other words, don't count our forest fires or the devastation from our pine beetles, but do count our forestry and farming practices.
So count our promises, not our actual activity.
I guess so.
Hey, sorry, my laptop's starting to run low on power. I didn't think it would be run this low.
Well, it's all good. If you gotta dip out, it's all good, my dude. We can also end it early if need be. I only have 2 other articles, and we can definitely save it for next week for sure, too.
We could do that, because I'll be a little more prepared next week, too. I was kind of running around to get this done today.
Oh, for sure. All right, we'll finish this section up, and then we'll wrap it up. This is actually crazy. This aerial photograph shows a forest infested by the mountain pine beetle in Alberta. Look at that shit. Like,
wow.
God damn. Okay, I gotta know, is the mountain pine beetle like an invasive species? It has to be, right? Mountain pine beetle. Species of bark beetle native to... Nope. It's just a thing that does some shit. That's it. Not invasive, this is nature doing a nature, I guess. And wait, is that a golf course over there?
Probably.
God damn it, Alberta.
The pine beetles need to go somewheres.
That's so America coded to just have this beautiful forest and then a fucking golf course.
Mm-hmm. Oh, Alberta is very much like America in some aspects, for sure.
I mean, it's kind of beyond like parody that the one area in Canada that has the most oil just happens to turn out like America. It's almost comical if you think about it.
It is. Little Texas.
Pretty much. This approach, Cameron says, would go a long way toward helping Canada meet its emission reduction targets under the Paris Agreement. We are currently projected to fall 232 megatons short in 2030, he wrote last year. By switching to one of the alternative accounting methodologies for emissions from land use, forestry, and forest products allowed under the framework, Canada could narrow the gap, perhaps by as much as 63 or 126 megatons. What? Just either of them? That's like a variation of like double.
I know. I love how their gaps are always so huge when they're estimates.
Yeah, like how do you just go like 63 or 126?
Like, how old are you, sir? I don't know. 1 or a million. One of the I don't know.
Even if our emissions don't change. The bottom line is that our trees, along with other plentiful sources of biomass, could be part of the solution in meeting our international agreements on climate change. But that's more a question of accounting than of actual emissions. As for the claim that Canada's natural landscape makes us carbon neutral, or even carbon negative already, I don't think that they would stand scientific scrutiny, says Blaine. All right. So that's interesting. I'm just going to go to this guy's tweet that kind of sparked this off and planted this little bee in my head. excuse me. To offset one ton of CO2, you need around 46 trees, let's say 50. Canada's CO2 output per capita in 2021 was 15 tons, let's say 20. So to offset the CO2 for each person, Canada would need to have 1,000 trees per capita. Canada has 8,953 trees per capita. The carbon tax is a scam. So take that how you will, but I found that a really curious article.
Yeah, I liked it though. It was informative.
That's what I liked about it too. Because that's definitely a topic that I used to be really familiar with, and then I got distracted with other stuff. But yeah, I like stuff that puts things into perspective, because again, I've heard that line used a lot too, where it's like, oh, Canada has so many trees, we don't have to worry about carbon. It's got so many trees, bro. We're all good. And I like how they broke it down, where it's like, well, no, they're not just holding the carbon forever. The carbon's released when they're burned or when they die. If you make those trees into lumber, it's that product's eventually going to decompose. I mean, wood doesn't last forever. You can do a ton of shit to make it last way longer, of course. Mm-hmm. But, eventually it's and that's something and that's something I didn't know. I was like,
I didn't know that either, to be honest.
Because I always I'm historically kind of supportive of environmental activities and, climate change and stuff like that. I definitely think the climate is changing. The main argument that I've always had is it might be a little controversial, but whatever. The argument I've always had is and apologies in advance, this might be a bit of a black pill, but my argument's always been okay, well, if emissions are just going to raise regardless, there's always a chance that we won't be able to fix this problem on our own. I mean, we're talking about a planet that went through one of the greatest mass extinction events in history. And that we weren't there to do that. That was just nature doing a nature, right? Mm-hmm. Yep. So it's entirely possible that the climate could change in the future. And, there isn't something we can do to the extent that will significantly alter the trajectory. That's possible. And in that scenario, we just got to rely on technology to see us through.
Yep. And,
predictions and models are great, but, they're not flawless. We're all doing our best to kind of keep an eye on it. But, at the end of the day, it's good to at least get more context, because, again, that was an argument that I never had any recourse for when people were like, well, look at Canada. It's got so many trees, bro. Look at all these countries. They're planting trees. We're doing our part against climate change. And it's like, well, is that doing your part? Is that doing your part, or is it just kind of delaying? That could be a good strategy perpetually, insofar as if we keep planting trees, we'll have these carbon banks, these storages. Mm-hmm. And then, I don't know, maybe we can send the trees to the moon. Maybe we'll do. Hey, you know what? I just solved climate change. Okay. Here's what we'll do. We'll plant a fuckload of trees in Greenland or something. And then we'll take all the trees, we'll put them into we'll have all the trees get the carbon. And then we'll put them into a giant space storage device. And then
it has to be penis shaped though.
Yes, it has to be dick shaped. And then we'll just send it into the sun. We'll get Elon Musk to do it. It'll be the one thing in history he actually does that will benefit mankind. He'll finally get to be a net positive in something other than being content for people with a brain. God damn it. I did it, man. We just solved climate change. That's it.
We're
It's a wrap. It's a wrap. We're
pay me
saying
my money. I'm out.
we have solved climate change. Perfect. God, why didn't anyone else think of this? The trees store the carbon, and then we just send it into
The
space.
trees. Yeah.
The space can't get global warming. It's space. There's no warm to be had.
300 years down the road, oh, we got space warming these jackasses on Maple Farm.
Oh, no. And with that, they expedited the global heat death process that claimed all life. But for a brief moment, they shit posted on YouTube.
That's all that counted.
This disclaimer goes without saying, but we're kidding. I don't think that's the way to solve this problem. Because I know there's always one person who's like, well,
But
actually,
if those trees were billionaires.
I mean, that's a much better solution. Look, we'll tell the people, okay, I got it. We'll tell the people that we're putting a bunch of trees into a storage thing and firing it into the sun. But what we're actually doing is putting billionaires into that container and sending it into the sun. And then magically, things will just turn itself around.
Yeah. Modern problems require modern solutions.
There you go. All right, guys. Well, I guess we'll end it there for tonight. We're at about a little under an hour and a half. Thanks everybody for tuning in. Next week, I'm sure we'll have a lot of crazy, stupid news too. You know, the conservative AstroTurf campaign has just gotten more and more insufferable. I want to do a segment too on Canadians who really wish they were Americans, because that's a lot of weird shit I'm seeing where a lot of Canadians are they're LARPing as Americans completely. They're like,
that has been a pretty big Alberta thing forever. And I don't dislike Alberta. I actually loved living there. But yeah,
no, gorgeous.
It's such a little wannabe America.
It's like, guys, why are you this is the equivalent of President's Choice being I want to be more like Great Value. That's the product I want to be. I don't want to be President's Choice cookies, which are amazing. Those are the best cookies ever. I will fight anyone on this. President's Choice.
President's Choice is delicious. No name brand. Oh, so good.
Yeah. But that's what I've never understood. It's why do you wish you were American? Why don't you just move to America? Why are you in Canada trying to be American? We're up here sitting here trying, and everyone I know is please God, don't turn into them. That's a cautionary tale. That's not something to look up to. Okay, we need to go in the opposite direction. Okay, no, do not turn our healthcare system into a privatized hellhole. Please, for the love of God. Jesus Christ. And I imagine a lot of it is kind of inorganic and AstroTurf, but yeah, there has been a lot of Canadians who have this weird complex about being Canadian where they really wish they were American. It fucking matters.
Yeah, no.
We all came from Europe and killed everybody here and took over the continent. Okay? We just have different policies, and they aren't even that different if you really dig into them that much. Anyway, I think we'll end it there after we have both successfully solved the climate change issue. I am going to stamp this as resolved. Moved to resolved. So don't worry, guys. Nobody has to worry about climate change anymore. We've sorted it. And yeah. Thanks, everybody, for tuning in this week. I hope everybody has a beautiful rest of your week. Be sure to check out the rest of the shows on INN. I'll be here tomorrow night with Politically Homeless, in case you want to watch two bearded idiots being really stupid together. I guess that's all my shows, really. Damn.
I'm like, not this bearded idiot. I gotta.
All right, guys. Well, thanks again, and yeah, we will see you same bat time, same bat weekday next week,
Yep.
same bat next week. I'm just